Okay, so thanks very much for joining us on this Lunch and Learn on working with a virtual producer. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sheridan Webb. I run the Training Designers Club, and our Lunch and Learns happen every month, most months. And on the screen there, we've got some of the topics that we've had in the past, which are all available to our VIPs free of charge in the members area. Today, we are looking at working with a virtual producer. We're going to have a quick introduction to me and Gayle. We're going to talk about what a virtual producer is and what they can do for you, and crucially, I think the benefits of using a virtual producer. And having chatted with Gayle before, it's almost like one of those things that you don't know you need one until you've used one, and then you wonder how on earth you managed without. So I think you'll find it really, really engaging. So what they can do for you and how to get the best from them, because it's very much a partnership approach that you need to take. So we'll look at that in terms of your design, obviously, and then in terms of actually potentially running on the day, how you're going to sort of pass that baton between you. There'll be opportunity for questions, I hope, at the end. We should aim to finish no later than 2:30. And then at the end, I'll just remind you of what's next, because this is actually our last Lunch and Learn this year. We don't do one in December because December's a short month, but there is something in its place, so I'll keep you hanging on that one. So introductions, you all know me. I'm not going to go through who I am. So Gayle, do you want to introduce yourself briefly, my lovely?
What a lovely photo that is. Where on earth did you get it?
Stole it from LinkedIn.
You looked it from LinkedIn. So hello everybody, I'm Gayle Kaufmann, and indeed, according to the slide, I'm a virtual producer. I also am a virtual facilitator. So I have been a trainer for over 20 years in various industries, most recently the criminal justice sector. And sorry, I just saw someone coming in the waiting room, so I paused. I was going to let them in.
You see, old habits.
Oh, honestly, I just can't help myself.
I shall deal with the waiting room.
I'll sit on my hands. So I was working in prisons and in the Highlands in very remote areas, and obviously there's no virtual training in those things. And I always kind of dug my heels and went, I'm not going to do virtual. I need to be in a training room. I need the people. I will never go virtual. And then 2020 happened, and the rest, as they say, is history. So I now spend probably 90% of my time doing virtual production, and another 9% doing actual delivery, and 1% probably doing design. But yeah, I'm an experienced designer, but I'm finding that I'm spreading myself a little thin, and I'm going to concentrate more on what I actually like doing, which is this kind of thing.
I've stopped sharing, so you can now share if you like, Gayle.
I know, I was wondering, I thought, oh, look at that. Can I?
I found my stop share button.
Oh, you found it?
I found it.
Right, so I'm going to just share this from my backup, because it's easier for me to use. There we go. So whenever I tell people I'm a virtual technical producer, they look at me and go, what is that? Even people who deliver their own virtual training quite often have never heard of a producer. And it's one of those things that's kind of a little bit difficult to explain in 10 seconds. So before I kind of get into that, I was wondering, we have a few of you here, and I was wondering, I know that you're all instructional designers, but how many of you actually deliver virtual training?
I think everyone does.
Virtual training?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Because there was a bit of silence then. I wasn't sure if you were delivering like face-to-face training or virtual training. Okay, yeah. So as an instructional designer, you probably also have clients that are delivering training, both face-to-face and virtual. And I'm wondering how many of those clients use a producer, and they probably don't yet.
Susie, does any of your, because you work with firms in the US, do they supply you with a producer?
There's two that do, but actually the one bit of work I was doing with them got pulled. So I've had one producer work with me for UK, but the US company always has a producer.
Yeah.
But then they were going to use Adobe, which I was very glad of because I don't get on with that at all.
We all have our favourites, don't we, Susie?
Yeah.
So yeah, I have several clients who use a producer, and my main client who gives me a lot of associate work has dozens of multinational clients, all using producers for their in-house training and instructional webinars. So I work for companies, organizations that have cohorts all over the world, and they're delivering quite often the same things like leadership training, for example, or behavior training to a lot of different cohorts. And having a virtual producer is quite good for that, because it means that we understand the material and we know the material and we know what's coming next. We can think ahead and that kind of thing. At first, I thought maybe it was COVID that had created this industry, but it hasn't. Some virtual producers I know have been doing it for the past 15 years, which, when you consider we didn't even have Zoom 15 years ago, so this has been an industry for quite a period of time, and I don't think this is a flash in the pan. Speaking to the corporate clients that I work with, they all agree that COVID has accelerated the situation, but there is a lot of trainers that are not going to be going back into the training room. And I think that a lot of corporate clients have kind of gone, well, when we think that how much money it costs to get all of these people in the same place, you think of your hotel bills, your transport, your, feeding the hordes, booking a training room, all that kind of stuff. It makes a lot more sense financially to do it virtually. And we are now at the stage, I think, that as designers, we have to think, how can we make the virtual delivery and virtual design as good as being in the training room? Because we understand they're very, very different, but it doesn't have to mean that one is worse or better than the other. They're just different.
And I think that's the interesting thing about looking at the role of the virtual producer, Gayle, because we're used to designing with the intention of one person does everything. So there is actually quite a different mindset, I think. Actually, if you've got two people who can share the things that need to be done, that is going to allow you to, it's going to open a lot more doors, isn't it?
Yeah. And the thing is, most producers are freelancers. So you don't have to have somebody employed full time, and you might not even be able to justify employing somebody full time. But trainers are paid to facilitate really great training. They're not paid to deal with all of the tech that goes with it. And it's very difficult to kind of do everything and be everything, especially if you're a learning and development person that's paid full time by an organization as an employee.
Yeah.
So to answer that question about what do you think a virtual technical producer is, I wonder if any of you can try and answer that question.
We're only a small group, so we're only a small group, so feel free to unmute yourselves. It's not like we've got 20 people on the call today.
And what is the question again?
What is a virtual technical producer? What do you think it is?
Okay.
Have you come across them, Leanne, in your dealings with South America?
Well, I don't know. I think I was there. Depends. I don't know if part of my role is sometimes a virtual technical.
It might be.
Did a little bit of everything. So that's what I was keen to attend today, because maybe lots of the stuff that I'm doing is also producing. Do you know what I mean? So I've in the next 3 conferences, I'm co-facilitating, but we're using somebody else's link. But we set everything up, and I just make sure it all goes smoothly. So I'm there.
Yeah, so you see, as a co-facilitator, in some ways, you're also
so I'm wearing both hats on the day, and we do dry runs, and then I work. But because I also help design with the main facilitator, because she depends on me to help with a little bit of the design as well. I think I'm wearing facilitator, designer, co-facilitator, Zoom producer hat.
It's so difficult to actually
Yeah.
draw the line.
Yes, I think I move between all the spaces for what I do, and sometimes I am the only person. So I've designed the course, done the run sheet, done the dry runs, maybe with someone with the client to make sure it all works, and then and I run the whole thing with, I do the copy and pastes.
Oh yeah, so you're already doing quite a lot of tasks.
Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, so some of the courses I run, I just do it all. Anyway,
so this is how I look at it. I look at it as being the trainer is the wonderful, amazing, and marvelous magician on the stage, wowing the audience with his or her charm and personality and knowledge and magic, really. And the producer is the person behind the curtain, pulling the levers and pressing the buttons to make everything happen, to make things work. So when it all goes well, nobody notices the man behind the curtain. And when it doesn't go well, sometimes the producer has to become the magician. And that's why I always suggest to people that your producer really should have an L&D background, because if it all goes belly up, you need to be able to rely on that person. And the first thing that a producer must know is the platform. And here's the big four. There are plenty of others. There's Blue Jeans and Big Blue Button and Kajabi and LearnCube. But the big four are basically WebEx, Teams, Zoom, and Adobe Connect. And as instructional designers, you need to recognize that they work in different ways, both the user interface and the back end. And you may well need to design differently for each one. I will quite often get instructions for WebEx when I'm producing in Zoom. So having a producer that can kind of figure out the differences there is handy. But as the designer, it's always good to know that if your client wants to move from one platform to another, they might need to pay you for another session of design work to make that transition.
And I think that's such an important point. So at that very first research phase, as you're taking the design brief, you do need to know what platform you're using, because I think we just assume, oh yeah, we'll have a virtual session, and the client may be thinking, oh well, obviously we use WebEx, so it doesn't even occur to them to say that they use WebEx because it's so blindingly obvious. We might be thinking, well, obviously we'll run it in Zoom because that's what I'm comfortable with. And then, 2 days before, that's when we get people in a massive panic to go, I've got to run it on WebEx and I don't know how to do it. Whereas I think if you've got a virtual producer who knows how to do those things, it's much easier probably to cope with this sort of change in platform, because as the facilitator, you don't need to know how to do it, you just need to know what it can do, I would think.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Also, it's quite handy at this stage to think about using a virtual producer for consultation.
Yeah.
Because for example, we have a lot of local authorities who are using Microsoft Teams, and we have a lot of virtual facilitators that just won't use it. Don't get me started. And they don't use it because a lot of the functionality is only there if you actually belong to that organization.
Yes.
So they'll get a facilitator and they'll give them a guest account, and then they can't share the PowerPoint, they can't set up breakouts, they can't do anything. And it's the most massively stressful thing on the planet is being in a live training, especially when it's being recorded and there's bosses there and you can't do anything. So having a consultation ahead of time just to get maybe a sense check and say, do you think this will work in this platform? Because also the platforms update and they change functionality on a very regular basis, and you and the producer need to take this into account. So for example, now you've got the green checks in Zoom. Even yesterday, I had this issue where, and I was delivering the training. So I wanted people to give me a green check when they had completed a task that I'd set them. But there was a few months back, for about a 2-month period, Zoom took away the green checks that stay for 10 seconds and then disappear. So that meant that as a trainer, you keep on asking people. If you've got 50 people in a session, you keep on asking for those green checks because they keep disappearing because people haven't updated the Zoom. So a producer knows, oh, this is where you find it, or this is how you do it, and this is how you deal with it. We'll keep an eye on those people to say, well, I know how many people are given green checks. So that's just a small example. And also, there's the back end consider things like security logins, host keys, guest accounts, that sort of thing. Here's a question for you then. If you, as a trainer, are delivering virtually, a lot of people that are doing training only have one screen. Some of them might have two. But when you're training, you're looking at your PowerPoint, you're watching your participants, keeping an eye on the chat, you've got your timings over here, you're working from your script, you're answering questions. Can you, while you're doing all of that, also deal with all of this?
Not a chance.
I bet Leanne can.
Yeah, I would need to make that a little bit bigger. I can't really.
Okay, it's just all of the breakouts, the chats, the
Oh yes, okay.
back ends,
Yeah.
the polls, the.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Yeah.
So having to deal with all of the normal things that you would do as a trainer, you're looking at PowerPoint, watching your timing, making sure you're engaging the participants, answering the questions, watching the chat, and then having to deal with all of this on top of that, even if you can, doesn't mean you should. Because even as a very good multitasker, you're having to keep so much stuff in your head that your delivery starts to suffer. Because you're constantly thinking, okay, how many participants have I got? If I do breakouts, what if I want breakouts who are just all of the regional teams together and not just random? Random breakouts are easy, but if you want
manual,
if you want to do it manually, you've got to do that while people are actually answering a question, perhaps, and you're sitting there frantically trying to do it in the background.
And then you can't pay attention to what people are saying in answer to that question. And I know that Leanne is our liberating structures expert. And she does this wonderful thing, exercise called 1, 2, 4 all. So you put people in pairs, but then you want them to stay in the same pairs, but become a group of 4, and then stay in the same 4s and become a group of 8. So all has to be done manually, which is very, very time consuming. If you've got a group of 16 people, that's a very time consuming and difficult job, because you've got to actually keep a note of where everybody was and who they were paired with.
Yeah, because this is what I do as a producer. I take a snip and I have the snip, because if somebody drops out, then I go, what room were they in? And when you're delivering to countries like China or India, they drop out quite regularly and come back because the connection's not great. So here's the thing: if you're doing all of that and you're trying to deal with the tech, it's not really what you're wanting to happen, is it? I mean, I'm a virtual trainer and I'm a virtual producer, and even I struggle with this. So other people are going to struggle as well. And when we look at sort of the demographics of trainers, a lot of us are over a certain age. So tech is not second nature to us. And a lot of facilitators will just go, I can't do it. I can't deliver on Zoom. I know loads who have just completely disengaged the last 18 months and gone, I can't do it. I'm going to retire early. And what a waste. What a shame to lose all that knowledge and expertise. So as designers,
we've all embraced it to a greater or less
extent. You're preaching to the converted, Gayle. Because I do associate work with a company, and for the longest time, I mean, I delivered my first couple sessions, and I had no virtual producer, so it was me. And you can really tell the difference because I had to watch my recordings back. And then they've now embraced something where they have what they call course managers, which basically they're getting people to do it on a voluntary basis in exchange for getting the training. And I'm kind of pushing them to say, look, if you want to deliver quality professional training every single time, you need a producer as well as because you can't see all those windows or something, you can't pick up all the chat. There's just too much to it. and it's a nightmare. And you can really see the difference in webinars when they have people that have producers and they're doing it professionally. It's very noticeable.
Yeah,
It is, isn't it, Chris? It's much slicker.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's also a lot of pressure on facilitators to cram as much stuff as possible into a short session.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that on your own, well, you can't. So you need to have like a 2-hour session instead of a 90-minute session. But if you've got a producer doing all the heavy lifting in the background, whether that producer is sitting off camera doing things in the background and being the man behind the curtain, or whether they're actually a co-facilitator, it doesn't matter. As long as there's two of you, you can make it run smoother. So as designers then, here's the choice. Do you keep it simple and have a one-person delivery? Or do you go for the smart option designed for a producer, trainer, team, knowing that the overall delivery will be much more professional, you can use more tools, and you can create a better all-round experience for the trainer, but also for the participants? Because the more relaxed a trainer is, you know yourselves, the more relaxed you are, the better people will engage with you. So let's think about what a producer can help with. So now you know a little bit about what we kind of do behind the scenes. Think of the designs and the deliveries that you do. What would you get a producer to help you with?
do you want to put it in chat so we can get a good list up?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Manage the chat. That was the perfect first
Absolutely. Yeah, do the breakouts.
Even managing the chat, it's kind of difficult to keep an eye on everything. And then, especially if you have a lot of participants, so if you've got 30 or 40 participants in a room and you're asking for, and people are asking questions, the producer, especially if it's an instructional producer that has that learning development background and understands the session and understands the material, they can be answering that in the chat while you're doing the magic.
I've just thought of something that, something that I would definitely use someone for is one of my favorite things, and I don't do that much delivery, as you know now, is often you'll say to people, so what are your biggest challenges with X? So you have a little brainstorm, and then what you want to do is take maybe 4 of those to expand on. So, but then you have to set up the Jamboards based on what they've already told you. So to have someone to actually, you say, okay, so we're going to look at A, B, F, and G. To have someone else just go to the Jamboard and set that up would be amazing.
Oh, we love a Jamboard. We love a Jamboard. The virtual whiteboards. You see those virtual whiteboards? What I always suggest to facilitators is to have a blank slide. Because that way you don't have to stop sharing, reshare, then stop sharing the whiteboard and then reshare your PowerPoint. If you just have a blank slide, it works exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Some people might not be able to annotate because, you know, because of the device they're on, or because they're on browser instead of app, or they might just have some digital issues. So what people ask me to do is sometimes I will annotate on the whiteboard myself, as well as everybody else doing it. If there's been some discussion, some people come off mute and they don't want to write on the whiteboard. They want to go, oh, my thinking is this, and I'll go and summarize it and I'll annotate it on the whiteboard for them. Or they'll put it into chat and I'll just copy and paste it across. So it means that the trainer can then concentrate on the discussion while the producer's listening, writing, copying, pasting, doing all of that sort of stuff. Ah, Chris, the timing.
I'm just wondering if that's a little nudge from Chris to say, come on, she's busy.
Yeah. Timing is that is the nightmare for me. So I mean, anything I can do to get help with that is always greatly appreciated, because I usually have like a second like iPad with one of those big countdown timers next to me and everything, and it's, you know, it's just sometimes it's helpful because you do kind of lose track, or you get carried away with the discussion, or you miss a comment, or there's a million things where you just can't be in all places at once, basically. No. Or if God forbid,
like
oh God, or if your slides don't load or something, they can share the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've all had those instances, haven't we, where for some reason we've dropped out or the slides have stopped working, and to just have someone else go, actually, yeah, they can, you know, can you pick up the slides, Gayle? I'll just got to reload my set.
Yeah. And you know, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you add it all up, it means that there's an awful lot less pressure. I mean, we perform really well when we're relaxed, and we don't perform well when we're stressed and freaking out over, oh my gosh, you know, I've forgotten to share the sound of my video. How do I do that?
Yeah. And just these questions here, I think that Susie, I think, put in about, you know, so when people do have difficulties, I can't find the link, they can't unmute themselves. Oh, which breakout room am I supposed to be in? It's all just stuff that you don't need to deal with as a facilitator, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, look at this, got Leanne there with the big words for a Friday afternoon.
Cognitive overload.
Ooh. I
Well,
mean, basically, they help you to be the best. They help you to deliver the best possible training you can. I think that's probably the way I would summarize. And they're like your little fairy godmother in the background, or fairy godfather, whatever. You know, your little angel in the background. I mean, they're a lifesaver.
Amazing how often I've been called the producer fairy. Seriously, I don't think, Chris, you weren't here at the beginning of the session, were you? No. I likened
another call.
I said the trainer is the magician on the stage, and I even had a little picture of, you know, doing all of the magic and wowing the audience, and the producer's the one behind the curtain pulling all the levers and pressing all the buttons to make them all the panels open, people fall through, and making everything work. So you're absolutely right. So, you know, as they say on the best cooking shows, here's one I made earlier. So I'm going, just by the way, Sheridan does have a copy of the pertinent slides, and she will be emailing those out after the session, and maybe getting some feedback from you.
Yeah, I'll put them on the recording.
So first of all, there's the tech issues. And this is, I think, the thing that terrifies people the most. And the tech issues normally happen right at the beginning when you're welcoming your participants and you're going, hi, my name's Leanne, and I'll be your facilitator for today. And then you've got somebody going, and you're like, oh, and I still have to welcome Chris and John and why isn't my PowerPoint slide working at the same time? And somebody's going, I can't see your screen. And then, you know, you're having to deal with all of this stuff at the same time, because these things don't just happen once. They'll happen if somebody can't hear you. There's not only one person that can't hear you, there's normally 2 or 3. And you're having to try, and if they can't hear you, they can't hear your instructions, which means you're having to type them in the chat. Can you check your cables? Can you test your sound? Can you do this? Are you on a Mac? Are you on an iPad? For more than one person at a time. So you can see how just that very, very first 5 minutes, having a producer takes an awful lot of the strain off you. And also a lot of trainers, they know how to share their slides and they know how to do their stuff, but they might not know how each of the platforms works, how it works across all the different devices, and all of the little updates that happen. Like, oh yeah, Zoom made an update on Monday that XYZ, so that's why you can't do it. And as a facilitator, you're like, I didn't know that. This is not my job. My job is to know my material and to engage the learners, and not to know what flipping update Zoom has just done. So these are some of the tech issues that the producer can kind of help with as they go. And normally what we do is we say, if you have a problem, we say it right in the beginning, and we even put it in the chat. If you have a problem, your technical producer is Gayle, and please send her a private message in chat if you have any issues. That way, hopefully, they'll send the private chat, and we won't have any problems with your session being interrupted, because you have no idea people are even messaging me. So you can concentrate on the magic, if that makes sense. There's also tech support. So anything like merging participants' audios, the security settings in the background, providing instructions during the annotations. Producers normally have 2 devices. I have my backup, where I've got my PowerPoint on. and I have my main. And each of these is on a separate internet line. So if one of my internet goes down, I'm still in a session on the other one. And facilitators are now starting to kind of panic a little about that whole dropping out thing, which means that they really should invest in the separate internet line and a backup. But, you know, these things are not kind of top of their priority list until it happens. So this is why we have this one, which is basically the training support. So if the trainer's connection drops, the producer can take over the session until they return. But bear in mind that if you want a producer to do that, they have to understand the run of show, know the session. This is a little bit more expensive than just, you know, setting up your breakouts. So your training support can be, like I said, in the chat where somebody might ask questions about session timings or the content, or what did they mean by saying that question? I don't understand. You don't have to do it as a trainer. You can get the producer to do it. And annotating those notes and also the breakouts. With a lot of facilitators, and I know this sounds awful, but I sit in a lot of sessions where I'll have a facilitator start to give instructions and then wander off and then come back to it. And by the time they've actually given what should be a 2-sentence instruction, they've spent 5 minutes fluffing around it, and participants are like, I have no idea what they've asked me to do. So they get into the breakouts, and then they're hitting that ask for help button, and I go in and they go, we don't understand what we want, what they want from us. So if the producer knows ahead of time what is being asked, we can actually give proper instructions in the chat, which is available in the rooms for them, or even create a slide that will upload to the chat and say, download that, and then you'll be able to know exactly what you're doing. So you can see how having somebody from an L&D background rather than, say, a VA is very helpful for something like this. Then there's all those admin tasks that you kind of need to do, you know. So sometimes you get to the end of the session, the facilitator goes, oh my God, I forgot to take attendance. So it's easier to just get somebody else to do it. So, right, this is the list of all the stuff I want you to do. You just get on with it while I do the magic. And these are just a few examples of the admin tasks: running the waiting room, you know, uploading files to the chat, having a countdown timer for breaks, that kind of thing. And there are more. These are just ones that I can think of on the spur of the moment, so to speak. But I'm pretty sure that as designers, you know, your job as designers is to think of everything. And I'm pretty sure that you can think of things that I haven't got on these slides. But this is one that you'll take away with you. Sheridan will make sure that you have everything that you need from this.
Well, that's the nice that we said to consult with a virtual producer as part of your design phase, to say, these are the exercises I'm thinking of running. What do I need to take into consideration? Because I think just to have even just a half-hour chat before we get into the detailed design is going to be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I notice a lot is they'll send people on a break and then have a breakout right after the break. And for me, as a producer, it's a huge no-no, because I see all those people, okay, we're going to have half an hour break for, you know, a lunch or whatever it is. And then people drop. They drop from the session and they go off and they have lunch, and then they don't come, and they come back late. And that means that those perfectly formed little trios that I had before the session in preparation for that breakout, I've now got a whole load of rooms with only 1 or 2 people in, and this trio exercise isn't going to work. And then you'll get people coming back 10 minutes late going, oh, what did I miss? Well, you missed a whole breakout. So it's little things like that that as a facilitator you might not notice, but a producer will. And they can give you so many tips on how to have a good breakout running. Okay. So you can see how these are tasks that can be done. But when you're kind of selling it either to yourself or a trainer or the organization that you're working with, you think about how does this really benefit you? I mean, we've already said, Leanna's already said about assisting with the cognitive overload and lowering those stress levels, but there's quite a few other different benefits of having somebody that has your back. Can you think of any?
I mean, overall, the experience of the training is going to be more effective, isn't it? Because, you know, you have a much greater chance of not having things go wrong that are going to delay it or, you know, disappoint or, you know, change the experience for people. And so, you know, as a trainer, obviously, you can then focus on really getting across, you know, enhancing that experience for your delegates and making sure that they go away with what they were supposed to go away with, instead of getting distracted by, you know, little technical glitches. Or, I mean, they're all minor things. And I think, you know, people are, I think there's some, you know, I think they're a little understanding when they happen, but they still distract and they still don't, you know, give you the best experience, really. And then really, I think what we should be pushing for is to make it like an industry standard that, you know, this is how virtual training is done. You do it with, you have a producer, you have a trainer. That's it. It's not this, oh, we're doing it on the cheap so that we can just have one person. It's like, no, do you want it done or do you want it done properly? So, you know, and you just build it into the cost and say, this is how I roll. This is what I do. This is how I work.
Yeah. Because, you know, at the end of the day, we, as freelancers, we're always worried about the money and how much are we going to charge? And, oh my God, am I charging too much? Are they going to laugh in my face? And yet we need to remember that if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. And you are worth that extra bit of money to make sure that you have a good product.
You're definitely preaching to the converted, Gayle, I think.
I love that quote though. I'm going to use that. That's awesome.
I think it's a South African thing. Buy peanuts, get monkeys.
Love it. Love it. That's
I heard it a lot growing up in South Africa, so I've no idea. I don't think anybody uses that in the UK.
Yeah, we do.
Do you?
I've not heard it before, but I like that.
Get peanuts, get monkeys. Or even better, you know, if you create a good process, and here you go as designers, if you create a good process, you can get a monkey to do it and pay. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these benefits that I've thought of then. It does create a slicker professional delivery when the trainer and the producer work well together. Chris has already said that Chris, you said that when you look at the two different things, you can see it's very obvious when there's a producer there.
Yeah.
And it saves the trainer stress, even those first 5 minutes when people are joining and going, or you see them talking and you're like, John, I can't hear you. Can you test your microphone? Can you reset your headset? Can you unplug your Bluetooth? These are often multiple and simultaneous at the beginning. So while you're trying to be all engaging and welcome to my show, and trying to run your session, and it saves the trainer an awful lot of stress. It also saves time. You can see all of those tech issues that usually happen in the first few minutes. That welcome, instead of taking like a minute or two, can take 10, 15 minutes if you're sorting all of this stuff out on your own. And it also means that you look like you don't know what you're doing, because people are sitting there going, oh, I've been sat here for 15 minutes and she's just trying to get all these other people actually into the session. Does she know what she's doing? Even though that's not actually your job. Your job is to deliver a session.
But you know, actually, that's a good point, because when you don't look like you know what you're doing from a technical standpoint, what does that do to your credibility in terms of delivering the material? Does that then make them think, oh, do they know what they're talking about? You know, do you see what I'm saying? Where you can kind of naturally go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Good point, Chris.
And
I think this whole saving time, when we started experimenting with virtual, and one of the things we did is we helped each other get comfortable with it. The feedback that came back from those early adopters was you need to give yourself longer to set up exercises than you do in the real world. But what you're saying is if you have a virtual producer, there's very little difference.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we have discovered from virtual training is the managing the expectations of the clients, because they want you to fit as much as possible into a 90-minute session. Just for example, oh, it's virtual, it's instantaneous. It's not. They would never expect you to fit all that stuff into a 90-minute face-to-face session.
No, that's true, actually. That's true.
Of course, one of the nice things is that, you know, when you end breakouts within 30 seconds or 60 seconds, everyone's appeared back in the room. You try and do that in a face-to-face session. You know, you're going to all corners of the building, calling people in from all these little coffee areas. Can you come back to the room now? You know, that takes you 10 minutes. So it can save time. Just even things like setting up the Jamboard, like you were saying earlier, Sheridan.
Yeah.
One of the things is the trainer doesn't have to provide participants with anything. No participant workbooks, links, video, instructions, files, all that sort of stuff is given to the producer ahead of time, and the producer just drops it in. If we hear Sheridan, for example, going, and you had some pre-work documents, boom, they're in the chat. If we hear Sheridan saying something like, and we're going to ask you to fit in a survey, boom, it's in the chat. So you don't have to actually think about, right, where is that stuff and where am I putting it while you're busy talking, while people are talking to you. And also, if you've got a very good producer, if they hear you, for example, mention an article or a book or a writer or anything like that, thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Take care.
Thank you.
Then they can go and quickly research that and stick a link in the chat for you. If they have the time, if they're not busy setting up all your 4, 3, 2, 1, 0 breakouts. So it reduces the admin load, which means that you don't have to think about screenshotting whiteboards and doing recordings. And yeah, the producer can help remember to pass or start recording the session. I have to actually, I've got to be honest, I've got to set myself an alarm to get me to start recording it again after a breakout, because because I forget to start recording it again. So yeah, I have to be really, really thinking ahead all the time.
Worse, forgetting to do it before you go to the break and saying something about the delegates. Yeah, that's happened to me.
Oh God. Oh,
Yeah.
That's painful.
Can I just throw something in?
It wasn't me saying something about delegates, it was somebody else I was with.
Or realizing like 10 minutes into the session, you forgot to hit record and you're like, oh God, nightmare.
So here's a tip for you. Record to your own device and not to the cloud, because that way, if something like that has happened, you can go and scrub it. You can go and edit it out. I did. Adobe
Good tip.
Pro.
Good tip.
I did very quickly.
So I had a very difficult session. I was producer for a session day before yesterday, where they asked me to record because the previous session with the same cohort had been so problematic in terms of engagement. The facilitator, bless her heart, she pulled out all the stops to get this cohort to engage, but it was a diversity and inclusion, and it was a cohort that did not want to do diversity and inclusion. So it was a real uphill battle. And thanks, Susie, take care. And then they said, okay, can you record this? So I spoke to the facilitator ahead of time and I said, listen, I'm going to be recording, but when they go into breakouts, I'm going to stop recording, because we need to make sure that you don't say something that the client's not going to want to hear. But one of the things that you maybe need to think about as well is, you know, when you enable the live transcription, if you enable the live transcription, that means that anybody in the room, participants, attendees, anybody can save that. And that transcription keeps happening when they're in breakouts.
Ooh.
Yep.
It records what people say in the breakouts?
No, it records what you're saying in the main room.
Right.
So you know how we've all done it. Everyone's gone into breakouts and a facilitator will sit back and go, wow, this is like pulling teeth. Or then they'll start talking about the dog that the dog's sitting, or, you know, the personal stuff. And if you have the live transcription enabled, it records everything in the main room. So when the attendees come back, not only can they see it, but they can save it and they can share it. So you've got to be really, really careful about stuff like that. And the producer will keep your eye on those things.
I'd be saying that anyway, but yeah, oh my gosh.
Talking about credibility.
As in lack of, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we know what we can do for you, but what do we need from you as an instructional designer? And again, this is some stuff that I've made earlier. First of all, we need you to understand what it is we're bringing to the table and how this helps the trainer. Who are you laughing about there, Sheridan?
Honestly, everyone's got 2 o'clocks. Thanks, Leanne.
Yeah, I need to start.
Yeah,
take my coat off and get set up for the next thing.
Oh gosh. Okay, have a great weekend, love.
Wish I had a producer now, you see.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't do makeup, Leanne.
No, I mean to get everything set up now, the slides, the copy and pastes and all the bits and bobs. Okay.
Tot ziens, mooi blij.
Good luck.
Bye. So yeah, we need you to have an understanding.
And floor. I think.
I'm going to take this personally. At one stage I was thinking, it is 2:30 we're finishing, isn't it?
I was gonna say, because I'm gonna have to go by a little after 2, but yeah, okay. Sorry, I thought it was an hour. Okay.
We'll carry on with the recording. It's fine.
Okay, we need you to understand what we do and how this helps the trainer. We need you to give us materials, a good facilitator guide, slide decks with notes, anything that details what we actually have to do.
And we've talked about that before in terms of when I was doing my designing for virtual delivery, I called them stage directions. You have to put those technical instructions in your session notes. You can't just say, and put people in breakout rooms.
Yeah. There's your instructions. I want to know. Slide 23, breakout 1, random groups of 4 to 5, 12 minutes.
Exactly.
Keep it clear and concise. And I go, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Give us a script. Most producers will be able to explain or instruct on their own. But if there's something specific to the session, you might want to give us a script for that so that we can read it.
Yeah, definitely trainer notes.
Give us time. This is the big thing. Don't give us like 3 breakouts to do right at the beginning when we're also doing the sorting out of the tech issues and introducing platform tools. We need the time. So bear that in mind when you're doing instruction. And then consider the partnership, because this is a tag team between the producer and the trainer, and think about how we can both be doing something at the same time. We don't want to facilitate going blah, 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 and the producer sitting in the background thinking, I'm bored. Give us something to do. So also how the producer and trainer take over from each other. So we did it earlier. Sheridan was sharing and then she went, okay, Gayle, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll start. What to look for in a producer. And I'm bearing in mind the time here, so I'm going to run through this a little quicker than I was intending to. You want someone who's prepared, organized, methodical, who prepares ahead of time, so that if there's any questions, where by the time you start your session, they've got a list of questions. Oh, you've mentioned this breakout, but you haven't given me a time, or you haven't given me how you want them set up. We want somebody who's going to, and this again, this is where the L&D background comes in. Somebody who can think about things from a trainer point of view and anticipate what you need.
Yeah.
So you can keep calm in a crisis. There's nothing worse than the facilitator dropping, the producer sat there going, oh no, what do I do? Someone who can think on their feet, can multitask, be flexible and adapt. These are sort of more personal characteristics. But then you also need somebody who has skills. Someone who's experienced and knowledgeable about the nuances of the tech, the user interface, how that relates to the actual material that's being delivered.
And I think so, to interrupt you there, Gayle, I think what's one of the things, if you are working as a team, so as a freelancer, if you're working for a client, say, well, we're using WebEx, as the trainer, as a facilitator, I don't necessarily need to go and meet them and get set up with them and that to that extent. Actually, my producer's going to come and they want to have a half-hour meeting with you just to fully understand exactly what we need to do and make sure we've got all the right permissions, this, that, and the other. Because you know what you're talking about, and the facilitator's going, we don't know what questions to ask a lot of the time, do we?
Yeah, you don't know if there's an issue or if there's a question until it happens, and then you go, oh, maybe I should have asked about that. I think one of the things that happens regularly is that if it's a reasonably short session, like say a 90-minute or a 2-hour session, that the producer and the facilitator log in half an hour earlier, and that 30 minutes is spent helping them to align with each other. And that's where you have the questions like, oh, you know, Annette, you've said you want a breakout here, but that doesn't make sense to me because such and such. And then Annette can clarify, this is actually what the instructions I'm actually talking about. Maybe the written ones weren't as good. So sometimes it's about having a rehearsal, a dry run. I think it was Leanne that said that she does a lot of dry runs when she does virtual training, because doing the dry run helps you to figure out
where the sticky points are going to be.
Yeah. And as instructors, instructional designers, sorry, think about the trainer's needs, because the trainer might only need a VA. A couple of random breakouts, get my attendance list, and that's absolutely fine. That might be all you need, and that might be something that is more economically viable for you. But a VA might not. I hear a lot of people, VAs going, oh, but I know how to use Zoom. But they have, even though they've used it, they don't know all of the little technical glitches that happen, or the updates that are happening very regularly, like those green checks.
Well, I think a lot of the time as well, it's like, you know, we're all competent on Zoom and we know how to make it work, but when it doesn't do what we expect it to do, we're stuck. And I think that's, you know, we can all deal with the really common problems, but as soon as what our solution doesn't work, we've got nothing.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, and this is why it's like I said at the beginning about the guy behind the curtain. If the magic show is working well, you don't notice him.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't go well, wow, you're going to need him. Hesitate to use the him. You'll need them, that person. So yeah, here's some kind of basic tips for working with a producer. I have a before, during, and after. Give us all the materials beforehand. Don't give them to us at the last minute because we can't prepare. Make sure that we can log into the room. If a host key is something like, if you're setting up your Zoom, but you're not actually going to be there, you will need to set up a host key and disable the waiting room. This is where your producer will advise you on this, so that the producer and the facilitator can actually open the room, because there's no waiting room, so they can just open it, and then they can use the host key to claim the host role and start to hand out co-host roles and set up breakouts and whatever they're needing to do. During, I cannot emphasize this enough, treat your producer as a valued training partner and not a skivvy. And the reason I say this is that some facilitators tend to treat producers like we're their secretaries or their office admin person. And what we're bringing to the table here is going to make that facilitator's job easier and more professional, and we're doing some heavy lifting in the background. If you treat us like a skivvy, we won't go that extra mile for you. We will just do what we are supposed to do. We won't go, oh, somebody has mentioned such and such, I'll quickly go research it and put a link in the chat. All those little extra things, we'll just do what we're paid to do and leave, and we won't want to work with you again. So having that valued partnership is really, really, really important for us. And again, I'm not going to read these out to you because, you know, I'm sure that you can read them yourself, and nobody wants to do a death by PowerPoint, and Sheridan will be able to give you all of this afterwards anyway. So I'm just basically going to tell you the salient points here.
Yeah.
Afterwards, you can give and receive constructive feedback. Producers watch a lot of trainers. We watch things that work well and things that don't work well, and we can say, actually, you know, Annette, I thought your engagement was absolutely brilliant. And how good does that feel, knowing that I sit for 40 hours a week at least, watching other trainers do things. And if I go, that was the best breakout exercise or the best Jamboard, I think this is great. And it works really well because I'm being sincere about that. And if you can give us a testimonial on LinkedIn, that would be wonderful. Or if it's somebody that you get us, if we're an associate for an organization, please email the project manager and tell them how well we did or how badly we did. Feedback is a gift, apparently. So some things to bear in mind: face-to-face and virtual are different. We know this, they need different design, and moving from one platform to another may entail redesign. So what works well in one platform might not work well in another.
Many clients don't appreciate, you know, so it's just like, oh, well, we'll run, we can run it on Zoom, and then somebody from on high says, oh, no, you've got to run it through Teams, and they don't take that into account at all.
So what do you do if that happens to you last minute? You've already designed for the other platform. I mean, that could be a really, because like you could see something like that happening, couldn't you? You think you're going to go in there and do a Zoom session, then suddenly they change it to you last minute.
That happens a lot as
like,
a producer.
I mean, that'd be, you know, then you go, oh, and then you, as you say, you get in there and you find you know, you can't do half the stuff you thought you were going to do. And it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do now?
Yeah, you really have to think on your feet there, Chris. I mean, you know, usually the facilitator gets material before the producer does. And it's the facilitator that goes, looks at the instructions and goes, whoa, hang on a minute. These are not the right instructions. The producer will look at it and go, whoa, they're having this in WebEx and I thought it was Teams. And that then is where the partnership comes in and the relationship comes in, because one of you will contact the other one and go, we need a rehearsal. We need to go through this and make sure we can actually do all of this and what needs changed.
Because you'll bring different things to the party, won't you? So the facilitator will say, actually, the key learning point from this exercise is this. So that's what we need to get out. And you might be able to say, oh, well, actually, on WebEx, we can do this then. So it is that partnership approach, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, I mean, things like Adobe Connect, for instance, you know, you can save your rooms, you can save all of your setups, you can save your slides in there, and that's wonderful. But then people will say, and I want you to save the rooms in Zoom. And you go, well, I can't. Yeah. One of the things as instructional designers is that, and I hesitate to say this, but you will earn more money by explaining to your clients that they need to pay you more to go and suss out all of these different options. If they want you to move, you need to be charging for that. Because that's not a 30-second job.
No.
I'm not going to say which one this is, which platform, but I bet Sheridan can guess.
Well, to be honest, even when we were very first started looking at virtual training, that's one of the first things that says you've got to know before you even start designing what platform you're using, because that is going to inform your design. You know, and I'm not an expert like you, Gayle, you know, but that was one of the first things that really struck me.
Yep. And a lot of trainers complain when they use a particular platform and they go, well, I can't get into it. And it's 10 minutes before my session starts, and what am I going to do?
How we love Teams. There, I said it.
I knew you wouldn't be able to resist. I'm just so glad you got in there before me.
They've updated it recently. So I was producing this week, and it's the first time I've done it for a while, and just on Teams, and it's all changed, and breakout rooms, etc., look completely different. And it was like, really glad we had a half-hour meeting beforehand to just make sure that we knew what we were doing. Yes. It's not an easy platform to train on, is it?
No, well, it wasn't designed for that, was it? It was designed for collaboration. It wasn't designed for training. I'm trying to make it fit.
And I think that this is where your rehearsals are so important, and having that producer is so important, because the producer can go, oh no, it's okay, because they've just had that update, and go and update your app, and you can do that run through, and they can help you with all of that stuff. And then you go into the session going, I know what I'm doing. We've already talked about consulting with a producer before when you're doing the design.
Yeah. And also I think the other thing linked to that, Gayle, is what you said before about getting feedback, is that as a producer, you can say, oh, I saw a trainer last week and they did this and it went down really, really well. And as a designer, you're thinking, oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
So we learn via you from, we learn from other trainers, don't we?
Yeah. And I think this is one of the things that we bring to the table as producers is the fact that we watch so many sessions. And I love it. I love getting all the training because I get to sit in on all these amazing sessions on all sorts of personal and professional development, sales and leadership and it's great. But yeah, we start to figure out what is working really well with participants and what doesn't. And not just that, if you've got a producer that is multinational and has worked with a lot of different cultures, sometimes they can advise you on that as well.
Oh God, that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think some of it's like you don't know what you don't know because you can't possibly know the ins and outs of every single platform out there that you might have to deliver training on as well.
Yeah. Because some cultures have a very strict hierarchy, and they won't give an opinion on something because the boss is in the room.
Yeah, that's good.
And how do you gain authority without stripping the boss of theirs? So yeah. Consider what level of tech support you or the facilitator might need, because again, you might only need a VA, but you might need someone who's an L&D professional and knows all the tech and all that kind of stuff. And you already know this one. You're designers. You know that the tech should support the learning, not get in the way of it.
Absolutely. Obviously, again, this is something that we said right at the start, is that the challenge should come from the learning, not from using the tech. So it's the same other thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Challenges are there to challenge us. And
the right challenges.
And not to stress us out.
Yeah.
So obviously, you need to think about the fact that your clients or your bosses or whoever it is needs to rubber stamp the request for a producer, and you might need to convince them. So here we go. I have a convince your boss slide.
Well, I think there's a couple of our VIP members who would love to have someone come in and help them. They do a lot of training, virtual training, and it's very busy. So I think this is going to be very useful for them.
That's fantastic. So yeah, I mean, we've got basic stuff like you can cope with bigger groups. The more learners that you have in your group, the fewer sessions you need to do, and that saves money. You can fit shorter sessions to fit more into one workday. And having a producer gives you more scope to make it more interactive about using the Jamboard or using the external software or putting stuff in the chat and answering the questions. It makes it, and of course, we all know that if it's more interactive, it's more stickable and people remember the learning. So finally, I'm going to wrap this up with, ta-da, that's actually a pre-COVID photo of me before I put on all the weight.
I think I've seen you with your hair down, to be honest.
My hair fell. I know it's been. Do you know why I have to pin it up? Because it's purple underneath, like dark, bright purple, and being corporate these days, I have to kind of tie it up and it's a bit more professional. Not have all these crazy colors. So these are my contact details if you need them, and this will also be on the slides that Sheridan sends out. And feel free to give me a call or drop me a line on LinkedIn or anything like that. I'm more than happy to
I'll connect with you for sure. Yeah.
Sense check you or anything like that.
She's in the main Facebook group as well.
Are you actually in the UK or are you in South Africa, Gayle?
I'm in Scotland.
Oh, right. Okay.
I can't tell from the accent.
Well, I was, I
don't know why people think I sound Scottish. I think I sound English. But the accent moves. It depends on who I speak to.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any questions or anything you want to ask?
Do you mainly focus on producing as your business, basically? Is that mainly what you then do, is support other trainers in terms of being a producer?
Yes. I kind of hesitate to answer that question because
okay.
when I set up Step 1 training, it was like 4.5 years ago. And I did a lot of work in the prisons. Said my criminal justice in my background. Did a lot of work in prisons, working with community learners. And it wasn't, the virtual was not a thing for me at all. It was not something I was interested in. So that, if you look at my website, you'll see all of the virtual, there's no virtual production on there at all. I started doing virtual production March last year. And I've discovered that it's actually the thing that earns me the most regular income. It's not as well paid as maybe training is, but I have a lot of clients that want a lot of hours from me. So it has been quite a big game changer for my business.
You haven't talked about rate scale actually. So.
Okay, ask me then.
Is that all right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, just, you know, I mean, obviously, you know, it's like trainers, you know, there's obviously a quite a range, but, you know, roughly what do virtual producers charge?
It depends on what you want us to do, because remember that some of those sessions might only need a couple of VA tasks. You're probably starting at about £30 an hour for very basic admin type support, which is kind of what a VA would charge.
Yeah.
Up to about £70 an hour. And what that depends on is the complexity of the sessions, how many hours you can offer us, because obviously if you're only going to give us 2 hours work and it's from 11 till 1, we might go, well, that's my whole day written off, so I'm going to charge the top end. Whereas, you know, if it's 8 o'clock, between 8 and 10, I've got the rest of the day to do other pieces of work, or, you know, go and get my hair cut or whatever I need to do. So between 30 and 70, I would estimate is a good ballpark figure.
And do you charge for your prep time, or is that just for the time in the session? No,
that's you need to charge for prep as well, because so for example, I produce for a 4-day, we're talking a full day, 4 full days of training, and it's got a lot of moving parts, and it has an external piece of software that I have to be also the expert on, and this is bespoke software I have to be an expert on. And when we get one booked in, we always have a couple of hours before, the week before, to say, right, what needs done, who's doing what, is the software working properly, is it behaving itself, what logins are we using, because it's 4 full days and there's so many moving parts and they have a lot of participants, we have to be a well-oiled machine. So for something like that, we need to have we don't need a 4-day dry run, but we do maybe need to have half a day or even a full day where we go through everything and we make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all aligned, because they might have 2 or 3 or 4 facilitators for that.
And would it be a similar rate if someone brought you in to like have a consultation with the client in terms of like the platforms and that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing that strikes me, as Gayle said at the start, is that when people are not having to pay for transport and hotels,
that seems really reasonable.
It's much cheaper, and it's not like doubling up on your facilitator. So I was surprised actually at how reasonable it was.
Yeah. You never know. I think that as the industry grows, I think those rates are going to go up.
I was going to say, I was doing some producing the other day. I don't put myself down as a professional producer, but I have to say I worked harder than I did when I did the same thing as a facilitator before Christmas, and I was rushing around pulling my hair out at one stage, and you have to be on it. So there were 2 facilitators. I'd been one of them previously, but was doing the producing for this particular one, and yeah, you have to be there all the time, whereas the facilitators get some breaks. And I'm thinking, I think I should be paid as much as the facilitator because I'm doing more. You know?
And yet when you talk to some facilitators, they go, God, that's a lot of money, because they're not charging enough as trainers. They're not charging enough.
Which is why you have to, if you're freelance, you need to build it in to your proposals and just include it in your day rate. And if you are employed, it's the fact it's not an additional cost, as you said. It's the fact is it's much cheaper than bringing in an extra trainer for a start.
Yep.
It means that you're using your time much more efficiently and much more effectively. So instead of having to spend all this time setting things up when you could be recruiting people or having coaching sessions with people, it actually works out to be quite cost effective, I think. You just got to look at it in the right way.
If you have somebody who's an L&D professional and who knows that the sessions and the run of show and the material, and your connection drops, and this is where again you start to pay the higher end for this, the instructional producer will take over until you can come back, because that is a hell of a lot cheaper than having to reschedule that session.
I can see that. Yeah,
You know,
I hadn't tweaked to the idea of getting 2 internet connections until I heard you say that, and I thought, oh wow, okay. So really, what you're talking about is like getting like an additional, like a second line, I guess, coming in. Is that right?
Yep. My advice is to have each of those with a different provider.
Right. Okay.
Because if you had both of them, for example, with O2,
I see what you mean, and their network goes down. You're toast, yeah. As opposed to if you got one with somebody else, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and you know the thing is, it's all tax deductible anyway.
Yeah.
So I think I pay about £70 in total. For my,
who have you found are the best providers then on that?
Don't ask me, because I've had to change a couple of times.
Right, okay, fair enough. Just out of curiosity. Okay.
Really sorry, I'm going to do what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. I was going to say I probably need to
Can't
shoot
keep
here
the
in a sec
audience,
as well.
Sheridan.
No.
Really sorry, really sorry. Thank you very much. Really interesting.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And as I say,
Anyway, so
get in touch anytime.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm definitely hunting you down on LinkedIn, Gayle. This is really, really good, really interesting.
Bye.
Take care, Annette. Bye-bye.
So I think it's fair to say that a virtual producer is one of those things that you probably didn't realize you needed one until you realized all of the different things that they can do for you. And as designers, obviously we need to know if there's going to be a virtual producer involved, because that is going to alter the way that we go about our training design. So I hope you found that really, really useful. Gayle did share her details there. You can find her on LinkedIn. Just search for Gayle Kaufmann. She's based in Scotland. As you can tell, she's really personable and be more than happy to help you with any questions that you have, or indeed, of course, provide a service for you. Just thinking to the next stage, if you enjoy this meeting, we have them most months. So if you come along as a VIP member, they are included as part of your membership. Or if you prefer to buy an annual pass, you can do that, and you'll be automatically sent the invitations for these meetings and the recordings if you can't make it live. So this is our November meeting. We don't have a lunch and learn in December. What we do have instead is a masterclass. We're going to be using the Transform deck designed by Terry Pierce, and that's going to be just for VIPs and annual pass members only, because that's going to be an interactive session. So we don't want too many people in that session. So all the VIPs, you'll be sent a link to join that if you want to, and if you're an annual pass holder, I will make sure that you get emailed the invitation. So with that, just a reminder there to make sure that you become a VIP member to get all of these benefits and so many more. And with that, I will love you and leave you and say thanks very much for joining us. And I hope to see you again, if not at the masterclass. We will kick off in January. We've got lots and lots of sessions already planned. We're looking at online training. We're looking at extending the learning journey. We're looking at storytelling, multicultural training, designing a session plan. We've got all sorts of things planned. So if you're toying with getting a Lunch and Learn annual pass, it's probably a great time to get one. So with that, I'm definitely going to say thank you again, and thanks for watching us, and I will see you soon.